Hello, Scribblers. I'm Katie, the founder and CEO of the Scribblers Den, your online source for writing craft courses and writing community. We're back today with another fantastic guest another fantastic guest. Completely flubbed that up, but that's okay. Joan Reardon. All right. Joan is the author of the Grimsbane Family Witch Hunters, which you can see right here, as well as Dad Rock Dragon Quest, which is coming out in June of 2025. When Joan's not writing, she's off having her own amazing adventures or playing D&D with friends and family. So thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here. I've known about Scribbler's Den since it's like infancy, so I'm excited to see all the great things that's happening with this new project of
Yeah,
yours.
I
So
almost
it's
I
kind of cool to
almost feel
be
like I
here.
need to do like full disclosure. So Joan is also like my I don't know which side you're on. I never know. Whichever side Joan is on of me. She's also my lawyer for a lot of legal things. So yeah, so definitely I just like I always feel like I need to do full disclosure, like this is how I know this person. So that people know, so that they can't sue me. And I have you recorded as doing like being there for this. So yeah. All right. So with all of that awkwardness out of the way, um, both of your novels, both The Grimsbane Family Witch Hunters and Dad Rock Dragon Quest, have this really great mix of fantasy, humor, and pop culture references. So, how do you kind of come up with those genius formulas that really engage the reader and make sense all together, even though it doesn't always seem like they should?
Well, whenever I approach a story, I always try to approach it from a point of also that I'd be happy to talk about when I'm promoting.
Mhm.
So whenever a character has an interest in something or whenever there's something that plays a big role in the story, that's usually something that I get a lot of joy out of, and that I just enjoy in my free time. So for example, Zadie is a huge fan of rock and roll music. Similarly, I'm also a huge fan of any kind of rock and roll music. I'm really into like just that sort of stuff. So just trying to write from a place of joy. Additionally, I feel like my characters usually are very opinionated and have a lot of interests because I feel like that's how most people are. So sometimes, rather than Zadie just being interested in rock and roll, well, she also enjoys hiking. She like kind of a big reader that doesn't play like a huge role in the story. She's very close with some members of her family, not technically including Lloyd because he is her mom's boyfriend. So I guess she's not particularly close with him, but I feel like people are very complex and have a ton of different interests, and I feel like the stories.
All right. So, and I think like I really liked what you said about writing from a place of joy, because I think that's something that is so often overlooked in creating stories and creating plots. So many writers, we want to just focus on what does the industry seem to want or what is publishing looking for, rather than writing what we feel in our heart or what we really like and love. So I love that you brought that up. Like, do you feel that that's like the same pressure to write for the industry?
I think there always is going to be pressure to write to the industry, and there's always going to be pressure to write to trends.
Mm,
The thing is, though, when you start writing to a trend, by the time you finish the book, or by the time the book gets published or picked up, sometimes the trend will be gone. It's not always the case, but you could be writing for something that's like currently in the process of giving
that
a place
totally,
of
totally
joy.
makes
It's something that permeates the story and it's
sense.
something you're passionate about. And I feel like you can tell whenever an author is very, very passionate or excited about the topic or nonfiction
Mm.
because the story will just like glow whenever they're talking about those items that they are very, very excited to introduce to the world.
Yeah, agreed. I agree so much. So when you're creating your initial story ideas, where do you start? Like, do you start with your characters, your setting, the plot? And then how does your story grow from that point?
It really does depend. So I guess it was different for these two different stories. So the first book I wrote because I was finishing up my history degree at Ohio
Mm.
State. Um, and it was, spring of 2020. And, as someone who is existing in the world
Yes.
time. So my college shut down. I was very, very much a busybody. and there were suddenly no, activities, nothing to go and do. So I figured I might as well write a book. But I was doing it as I was finishing my history degree and really interacting with primary sources. And I thought that was a very, like, it was something I really wished I'd learned earlier in my life is to look to primary sources and to think
Mm,
critically about history. And that wasn't really something I got until later in high school or early in college. And I thought that that would be something great for middle grade readers to be thinking about earlier. So I guess my interest in history at the same time, I was listening to a lot of podcasts about cryptids, monsters, the origins of
mm.
monstrosity, that sort of stuff. And I was taking some classes on similar topics. So I guess that's where the Grimsbane family witch hunters came from. Simultaneously, COVID happened, and I was missing my family terribly. I have a huge, huge, huge family. So the Grimsbanes really does combine history, cryptids, and monstrosity with a
Yeah.
very, very large family. It kind of has like a Tim Burton sense to it, but that's where that story came from. Dad Rock Dragon Quest was totally different. I wrote Dad Rock Dragon Quest right after I got engaged to my current husband, who is the muse of this
I like how you
particular
said your
story.
current husband, as though there have been like
Yeah, because he was my
many.
fiance, now he's my husband. But yeah, so I wrote Dad Rock Dragon Quest just uh based on everything I love about Ben. So Ben is also like a huge fan of rock and roll. He loves these like 80s action movies. So he watched stuff, like Die Hard. Um Top Gun's a big one.
Yeah,
Speed,
that like the Top Gun references in Dad Rock is just amazing. I appreciated those. So,
yeah. He drives a Subaru, like these sorts of things. So it's like everything he loves to cook. So like everything that I
mhm.
love about Ben, I just tried to put into a story. And we love going on road trips together. I wanted to write a story that just kind of celebrated him. So the dad, Damien, and the stepdad, Lloyd, are if you took Ben's brain, like his left brain and his right brain, and split them into two people. And it was kind of funny when Ben was reading the book originally because he said it's like watching like my inner thoughts, like when these two guys are talking, like whenever I'm trying to make a decision. So if you read Dad Rock Dragon Quest and you watch the interactions between Dad and Lloyd, you'll just understand what it's like to be Ben for a day.
That's amazing.
But yeah, so first came from, history, just like all that stuff that was bringing me joy. Second, big thing that was bringing me joy and still is bringing me joy, my husband. And then I am working on a heist book, and I wrote it mainly just because I wanted to write a heist because I love like Ocean's 11, like those sort of heisty stuff. Six of Crows, a big fan of that. And I thought it would be fun and challenging to try something new. And then it also takes place during the Christmas season. So it's a very like Christmassy middle grade heist, which is a ton of fun. You
Yes,
read it. It's
I
currently in the
did.
process of
It is
editing.
like I think that of the three books of yours I have read, I think it might be my favorite.
Ooh,
Um,
thank you.
yeah, like I really like it. I just it hit me in the heart, and it was happy and funny, but also very um like I said, like I think I told you, just because the what it deals with your main character, I see that reflected in so many of my own students in this great middle grade book that will help them to kind of like see some of these deeper issues that exist, but also this amazing heist. I'm
Thank
not
you.
usually a heist book person. I'm actually very critical of heist books. And I was like, this is perfect. I love every level of this. So
Thanks. It was a ton of fun to write. I really did enjoy the heist portion of it and like planning the security measures that would be present in the North Pole.
mhm.
And then, based on like the different heist archetype characters, just coming up with it is basically Polar Express meets Ocean's 11, just archetypes of naughty children that you would need in a heist.
Yeah, like
So
it's
it
just
was a good deal of
perfection.
fun.
I love it. It's so good. It's so good. So if you haven't read any of Joan's books, like this is, you need to go out to the bookstore and go buy this one and then pre-order Dad Rock. So then publishers know like we need to get this heist book. So that we need Joan to write more books, guys. Like that's your
Thank you.
job. That's your assignment, Scribblers. All right.
Thank you.
Um,
Fingers crossed. We'll see how it goes.
so much, so much. So a few weeks ago, I had Joan actually come into my creative writing class and talk to my students as a guest speaker, and she did this absolutely amazing exercise about creating plot for a story. They came up with, actually it ended up being a heist that was going to have to break into the mayor's office because the mayor was hiding aliens for NASA. And there was like a small town, had kind of had like a Stranger Things vibe to it, I think. Um, So can you just kind of walk us through the method that you used with them? Because I thought this method was so genius, and I think a lot of our viewers would really like to see it.
Yeah, so this is, a plot activity I'll use like once I have an idea that I'm like ready to work toward, or if I just have like a character that I'm interested in or a plot point. So like for example, I wanted to write a heist. But whenever I start off plotting, I just write a bunch of things that are bringing me joy down, just get that all out there, just things that I would be interested in talking about, things I'd be interested in writing about and spending time with. After that, I divide it into four, like a piece of paper into four different pieces. So there's character, setting, plot. Then the last, I think, is doesn't necessarily need to be in the book. It's the aesthetic of the book. It's the cool factor. Like if you're going to say like Grimsbane core, this is where that would fit in. It's kind of like if someone's going to host a party themed around your book, what that party would look like and what the energy would be.
Oh, I love
And
that. I
just,
love that as a description. That is so good.
it's just because I feel like it's very, very important
Yeah.
um, just to have like a very, very clear idea of the nature and aesthetic of your book, especially now when, social media is such an important part
Hmm.
of being an author.
Yeah.
So there's the vibes section, essentially. Once you start off, you can start really in any place you want. I feel like plot is not necessarily the best place to start off just because there's plot archetypes. Plot is usually the easiest thing to come up with just because there's these stories you return to time and time and
Mhm.
time again. But what people are really drawn to when you're pitching a book to someone is going to be the characters and also the setting. So if you have an interesting
Yeah.
setting and interesting characters, it's usually, sometimes people come for the plot, but they're going to stay for the characters or the setting,
So
right?
true. So true.
Most important is going to be the characters because that's
Mhm.
who you're going to be sitting with. That's what's going to take the story to the next level is if you have really relatable characters. So, for example, just taking, how I wrote Dad Rock Dragon Quest. Ben's really, really interested in rock and roll. So I was like a kid who loves rock and roll, main character, right? And from there, I built out with the setting and I was like, okay, things that I love. I wanted to put dragons in the story and I wanted to work with mythical creatures. So I was like, okay, well, like put that in the setting and it's like a preserve for magical creatures. Returning the character, there has to be something, I think, not necessarily relatable, but I think there has to be a problem that the audience would be interested in. I
Hmm.
think it's better if it can be relatable a lot of the
Yeah.
time. It doesn't necessarily need to be. A good example of this would be like family issues. I don't know a single person on this earth who hasn't dealt with like some sort of disagreement with a family member at
Yes.
some point in their lives.
So many
It's just
different
part of
levels
being
and
human.
layers of family
Mhm.
issues. So that's always such a solid one.
Yep. Any kind of relationship, even like
Hmm.
even a romantic relationship, I can feel like struggling at work or trying to find purpose in life,
Yeah.
especially for young readers, trying to figure out who you are. Those are all, important issues, or even trying to live up to like expectations, either from yourself or an extraneous force,
Hmm.
are all various different problems. In this one, I went with family issues in that the main character, whose name is Zadie, her parents are divorced. Her dad lives in Virginia. He's a park ranger. They don't see each other very often. And her mom has recently started dating again, the person who is just the antithesis of her dad. Her dad is very much like a rock and roll kind of guy, like very, very, very risky, just always looking for the next adventure. And her mom's boyfriend, Lloyd Clutterbuck, is a chief risk, what is it? Chief risk management officer, something like that. Chief risk
Yeah.
compliance officer at a big company that makes machine parts. So he is just very, very anxious, very high anxiety constantly, and just trying. It, he does have Zadie's best interest at heart, but
He
Zadie really
does.
does butt heads with him just because they have completely different personalities, and there is also the fact that he is just not her dad. That just plays a big role in it. So that's kind of what Zadie needs to fix is both her relationship with her father and her mom's boyfriend. And that's like what's really holding her back as a
Hmm.
character. That by the end of the story, there's kind of that promise at the beginning that we're going to work through this together, like me and the reader, and that at the end, this relationship is going to change somehow, some way, hopefully for the better. If you're one of those authors who likes to make the readers cry, sometimes for the worse. But with middle grade, it's usually like a happier ending.
Yeah.
I'd say 9 times out of 10, especially when you're working with a standalone. Uh, Plot was the next point, and this is when you're looking at some very, very common plot archetypes. Heist was one we were just talking about, romances, buddy cops. In this situation, I picked a quest just because, what's going, something that needs to spurn all these people. I was trying to figure out how to get them all to be in close quarters together, being forced to interact and solve problems. And I was like, okay, they need to be in a car. They need to be going on a road trip. And I already knew like the dad was working in a magic preserve of dragons. I'm like, okay, dragon gets taken by poachers. We got to save him.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where that went. So you work through character, setting, plot, and then the aesthetic. And that kind of like with this one was just very, very clearly there. Like it's very much summer road trip vibes. It's, like an action movie.
Yes.
But we also have like that rock and roll energy that's just kind of like permeating it throughout. So there was like always like a very, very clear summertime aesthetic with this book. Whereas like the Grimsbane aesthetic is like very, very creepy, it's very Halloween. You're in a dark forest full of monsters,
Yes.
not as fun. The heist was fun. That one I kind of picked like a more Las Vegas aesthetic for the North Pole, but we'll
Which I
see how it
love. I
lasts.
love that so
Thank
much.
you.
Because
Thank you.
it just
Yeah.
fits. Like you don't feel like you never think, oh yeah, North Pole, Las Vegas. That, but when you hear it, you're like, yes, that is
It was fun.
exactly what Santa would do. 100%.
Yes. Thank you. Yeah. Like that was a ton of fun, just because it was like that like sort of like 1960s, 1970s Las Vegas aesthetic. Which I think is good for a heist as well, just because like you think heist, you think Las
Yes.
Vegas. Like what other better place to do it?
Yeah, it
But
really does.
yeah,
Like it all, it just, like I said, you have this great way, I think, of just taking all these outlier elements and bringing them together and making them so cohesive. I
thank
might
you.
make some people angry by saying that I enjoy pineapple on pizza, but when you first hear like, oh, pineapple on pizza, you're like, wait, why would that work? But then it does, and it's just like amazing, right? I feel like you have that same ability to just take those weird ingredients and make it so delicious.
Thank you. That is actually my favorite pizza topping, which,
Excellent.
might
Yeah,
result in some one-star reviews on Goodreads, but like that's okay. But yeah, I'm very much a pineapple on pizza kind of person. And I think barbecue sauce on pineapple on pizza, also very exciting. But
you are not
yeah,
wrong. This this
something
is
to think
why I
about.
like you. This is why you're
Something
here
to
with me
think
right now.
about.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that's a really solid way though to just get that basic idea out for a story and really get it to be start being cohesive. I mean, then you actually have to write it, which is always the challenge.
That's
But
always a journey. That's always a journey. I always start over halfway
yeah.
through. That has happened like every single time. But,
Yeah.
you know,
Do you ever go back to that method in the middle? Like when you have to start over, do you ever say, okay, like the setting's not working, so let me go back and kind of reorganize that? Or do you just problem solve as you go?
it has always been every single story, it's been a character that needed redone,
Okay.
which is interesting. So in the Grimsbane Family Witch Hunters, I had to completely redo Rosario just because her personality was not working.
Interesting.
Um, Second book, I had to redo Persephone because I feel like she got very, very, and Persephone is Zadie's older sister. She got very stereotypical
Mhm.
because she used to be like very much like, oh yeah, straight A student, cheerleader type. And I was like, this is a little interesting. We're gonna make her like an eco warrior. Because I feel like it went better with the book and I had her like
Yeah.
have something a bit more in common with the dad. And then yeah, the third book, I don't want to spoil. I did the antagonist wrong because in the original draft, the villain was
Mhm.
Santa, which would not resonate with 8 to 12-year-old readers.
It would not. It would not. I mean, I personally think it's great, but I am not your market. So you're absolutely correct in that choice, I think.
It would have been a real uphill battle. Like they are robbing Santa, there is no getting
Yeah.
around that. But yeah,
But
the rest,
it's for
I was
really
like, this is
good
just
reasons,
not gonna.
guys. It's so good. Like seriously, it's so well done. So well done.
You.
Um, like, are you listening to me, editors and publishers? You need to buy this book yesterday and get it out. And please send me an arc when it's ready. Um, so we've already kind of touched on this just a little bit, but I want to do a little bit of a deeper dive. So you talk about how there's only so many, plot archetypes, right? So how do you keep your ideas fresh, and make it feel original and put your own twist on things?
So I feel like oftentimes with plot, this is where stories will get like a really timeless quality to them. Taking just, I keep saying the word example and I'm going to again. As an example, we're just going to delve into a revenge plot for a bit.
Beautiful. I love
So
revenge stories.
when you look at Hamlet, Dune, and The Lion King, they're all a revenge story, and they're
Makes
all very, very, very similar, right? So it's all about, a son whose father is killed by an uncle relative type figure, and then he has to go away and then come back and then retake the throne.
yes.
Now, it doesn't always go as well as it does for Simba, clearly,
No, it does not.
but um, I feel like where these stories differ and what makes them so that's where the timeless quality comes from is when you're looking at the exact plot. I feel like where it gets a bit more unique is when you're looking at the aesthetic of your world and how that would play into the plot. So that would be like that fourth factor, and also how your specific character would respond when facing questions
Yeah.
within that plot. So, like, for example, like Simba is not going to respond the same way that Paul Atreides does. And these are very different worlds. They should not be expected to. But I feel like that's what makes the stories unique, again, is like going back to the character, not necessarily the plot itself, because it's the setting and the character, and then what decisions the character makes within that world and
Yeah.
within that sort of plot archetype that's going to be driving the story, not necessarily the plot itself, if that
No, that
makes
totally
sense.
makes sense. And I agree. I always feel like for me, I'm a character junkie. So you can give me a good setting and a good plot, but if the characters aren't there, I'm gonna get bored. I'm not gonna like it. But you give me a good character and like a terrible plot, and I am locked
Mm-hmm.
in. Like I am there. So I would
It's true.
agree. I think character is such an important aspect in that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so do you have any elements that you see that keep showing up in your writing? And what are they, and why do you think that they keep showing up?
Oh, fun. I feel like family plays a very, very big
Mm,
role in each of my stories. I am very, very, very close with my family. We live 10 minutes away from each other. All of my siblings live in my same hometown. And, I did mention before, like, I have a tremendously large extended family. My dad is one of seven children, and my mom
so
has two
many.
brothers and three stepbrothers. And we're all very, very close. Like, most of my cousins still live in the same hometown I do. So, I feel like it was just very natural for me to have those family issues be at the forefront of each of my books, because the thing
Mm,
I probably care most about in my life is my family. So I feel like it's just something I can instantly relate to and instantly pull emotions from, is like, the Grimsbane family witch hunters, for example. Um, Anna's brother Billy, her twin, is, in danger pretty much the entire story, right? And so trying to get those emotions, like I can think about my own siblings who I'm very close with, and then
mm.
just pull those elements into the story. My stories are all very Midwest. Anna's from Indiana, Zadie's from Michigan. And then I actually don't mention this in the third book, but he is from Iowa.
Okay.
But he is an Eagles fan because that is the correct team. And that is just that is a very
Excellent.
important fact. Um, But yeah, I all my characters just very much have like Midwestern energy, as do at least the early settings.
Yeah,
But
I would
Dad our job
agree.
across the
I would agree
quest
on that.
across the Midwest, like
Yeah.
they're not very coastal folks. Like they are like me, they're like out in the corn in the woods. It's kind of just where these
Yeah.
characters are coming from. So I guess it's just very much like Midwestern values and like family and friendship
Mm.
are going to, I hypothesize, remain constants in everything I write forever.
Yeah,
We'll
no, that
see.
makes sense. And I think that the like I agree, like the family elements in every one of your novels has been very strong in different aspects. So, and I really like that because it's not always like that same family dynamic. The dynamic in Grimsbane is way different than Dadrock Dragon Quest, and it's different from your heist book, but they're all very much about that, like that family core at the center. So yeah.
Yep.
All right. So another plotting question for you. When you start planning out your stories, do you already know the endings, or do you kind of just discover it along the way? So, in other words, basically, do you start at the beginning and see where the story takes you, or do you start with the end and then work your way backwards to figure out how you got there?
No, I am so type A. You did mention earlier, like I am a lawyer. I do
Yeah.
corporate and real estate law. Like And I feel like it just also helps with timing because, I do have, a very, like, I absolutely love my day job, but it is an intense schedule. So
Mm,
I feel like having everything mapped out ahead of time really does help me keep up the pace when I'm writing, when I might not necessarily like always have a very set writing schedule. Because if I know exactly what's going to happen, like I try and work out the issues
right.
beforehand. Doesn't necessarily always happen. I usually have to like go back and rework a character or change a plot point. But just I've always known exactly what's going to happen in every ending before I write it. I do a spreadsheet of plot
Mm.
points. I'll do chapters like on this axis, and then this axis is plot, subplot, all that stuff,
Oh,
chapter
wow.
title. And then I know exactly what is happening and making sure all the beats are getting hit in every single little section. And it gives me a great
That's,
deal of satisfaction as well because it feels like I'm doing something when I could just like check off like one teeny tiny box. Like
yeah.
someone mentions this, I'm like, oh, I'm making progress. Like just
Oh my
going
gosh.
through.
No, I think that's fabulous. And I love that like you do a whole spreadsheet. I do my spreadsheet afterwards. I do like the reverse outline. I always know the ending of my books. Like I know the ending and I know what's going to happen like 10 years after the ending. And
Oh,
then
that's funny.
and then I go
Oh,
back to the
interesting.
beginning and I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to get there, but I'm going to get there eventually. And so I work my way until I get to that point. But I always know the ending first. It's very strange.
Oh, interesting. No, I always start with like a very, very solid beginning. And then from the beginning, I know the ending, and then I have to
Mm,
plot out the middle. I feel like the middle is just like where it's like
yeah.
that, like in Save the Cat type lingo, it is that fun and game section where it's
Yes.
just trying to make sure that the plotting's tight throughout that. I feel like is a real challenge
Hmm.
because, the energy's there in the beginning and the energy is definitely going to be there in the finale. But it's like when we're experiencing that growth period in the middle, uh,
Yeah.
especially when there's like a fantastical element. There's always one chapter in every book. It's like right after the debate session where it's you're trying not to info dump, but it's very, very hard not to. Where you're just trying to be like, and this is the world you're now
Yes.
entering, especially in middle grade, because it's like you have like one chapter just because the word
Hmm.
counts are so
Yeah.
tight.
I mean, you have
It's
to.
like
You have to at some point. So, yeah.
yeah, and it could very easily delve into like question and answer type
Yes.
dialogue. So it's I always try to structure it like an argument for like how we're gonna proceed.
Yeah, because
But
I mean,
that
it's
part's
that
always very
that's a
difficult.
really it's a tough thing to figure out how to get all that information across to the reader. Like these are the rules of this world, and this is how these things work. So that they can settle in and like enjoy the story and not have those questions, but also not be like, okay, and here's your history lesson. Okay, moving
Mhm.
on. But yeah.
Yeah, that part just that's always like the most difficult chapter for me is just trying to explain like, and this
Mhm.
is magic and this is how it works.
Yes,
But
makes
once we get
sense.
past that, it's usually a lot easier. But I feel like that's where my outlining like always just slogs down. I'm trying to
Mhm.
figure that out is like how we get from point A to point B
Yeah.
and explain the magic system like within it.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay, so now that that's like the perfect little segue into my next question, which is, do you have moments where you get stuck as you're writing with a character or a plot point or how to explain magic, and how do you work through that?
So I usually do turn to the I can usually work through like how to explain magic and like that sort of thing just because it
Mhm.
is just finding out how to make it entertaining.
Yeah.
That's not as difficult. I feel like when there's an issue with a character is really where I struggle more, just trying to figure out their personality or like redoing the entire antagonist of this last thing I was writing because that was just I got to the 75% mark and I was like, oh no. But oftentimes I'll turn to, I'm also a huge fan of like Broadway music,
Hmm.
uh, musicals, that sort of thing. And the great thing about them is that it's always characters that have to discuss something very important to them very quickly in like a 3 minute
Yeah.
song and just kind of get the whole vibe across. So whenever I get slogged down with like a villain or a character, I turn to Broadway music and I will listen
I love this.
and
Like this
just
is
see what
brilliant.
kind
This
of
is
energy I could like pick up on through there. Struggling with villains, I will listen to Disney villain playlists like a
okay.
lot. And just kind of figure out like what sort of thing could like potentially like motivate a villain, that sort
Mhm.
of stuff. But yeah, so I guess it's just oftentimes I turn to music, when I'm dealing with character issues. When it's any other sort of issues, I just sort of force myself to figure it out. There's
Just
really no other way
plow
to do
right
it.
through it.
It's just you're gonna, sit down and just have a miserable hour, and then it will be done.
Yeah.
And
And
then,
sometimes that's what you need to do. You just need to like sit down, fingers on the keys, and just do it. Yeah.
yes, and then your beta readers will tell you what you did wrong.
Yes.
So as
Yes.
long as it's on the page, then if it's great, then they'll tell you it's great. And if it's wrong, then at least you have some way to work through it and get some
You
feedback.
know how
But
not to do it.
correct. Yes. And it's always easier to edit than it is to write, I feel. Like once you have a
Agree.
starting point, it's very much it's like a springboard. But building that springboard, just with all
Yeah.
the tools is just so difficult sometimes.
I feel like it's like you get like a nice shelf from IKEA, but like it's missing one screw, and you're like, I can't build
Mhm.
this shelf now. Like, what do I do? And it takes you forever to like figure out that you're missing that one screw, and then you have to like call IKEA and they have to mail it to you, and it's this whole thing. And I feel like that's like the perfect metaphor for when you just can't quite get a scene right.
No, that's true. And then all the instructions are in Swedish and it's just like
Yeah.
not helping the
Yeah, you're like,
situation.
I don't know what to do. I don't know how this works.
Yeah,
Um,
but
so just a really quick follow-up with that. Do you find that
mhm.
you have more trouble when you're writing like with your protagonist or with your villains? Like who do you struggle with more? I'm just curious.
I feel like it's oftentimes the secondary characters,
Okay.
in all honesty, like where I really do struggle
Hmm.
because it's just you don't necessarily want the secondary character's purpose to be uplifting the main character. Like they have
Right.
to be like their own people with their own motivations. Uh, and so it's just trying to figure out like because you spend so much time with your main character, and then usually when you get to like that, 50% mark, you've spent enough time with your secondary character to recognize something's wrong.
Right.
And then you have to go back and like figure out, okay, so like why would they make this decision here? And like what was their motivation behind that? Like what
Hmm.
are their core values that are motivating them and how are they going to grow in this journey? So I feel like secondary characters, because you also get far less time with them. Because I feel like
True.
most times the antagonist is mirroring the hero in some way. So the antagonist is just the hero if the hero made all the wrong decisions,
Yes.
a lot of the time. At least with my stories, it's just like the antagonist is, all the hero's worst traits just personified, usually in another character who serves as like a warning sign to them as they're trying to work through whatever issue we established in the first act.
Yeah.
Secondary characters, you don't get that so much. They're not really mirrored in the antagonist. They don't necessarily mirror the main character. They have different traits, but it's just trying to figure out how that fits into the book and how you're going to make them grow if they're more major secondary
Right.
characters as much as your main character is growing.
No, it totally makes sense. And I do like with secondary characters because you're right, like you have that balance of they're there kind of like as in a supporting role, but they also have to be their own entity. Like they could walk off the page and be the hero of their own book somewhere.
Mhm.
And
Because
it's
it's
hard
interesting
some.
because every single, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was
Every
gonna say
single
I think it's a
person,
hard balance. Go ahead.
yeah, every single person in the story thinks they're the main character,
Yes.
right? So like every person is going through and being like, this is my story.
Yes.
So, and I feel like it's funny because that's like Billy's big problem in the Grimsbane family witch hunters is he has like major main character syndrome,
Yes, he
even though
does. He
he is a
does.
secondary character. Because
Yep.
he reads a lot of these fantasy books and he's like, oh, I will be Bilbo Baggins. Like I will be going on this
Right. And
adventure. And then
especially because
he
like he's
screws up
not
in a
allowed,
major way.
like
Hmm.
the whole
Yep.
thing is he's not permitted to do that. So of course, like that just makes him even more main charactery.
Hmm. Yeah, no, he is the main character in his own
Yeah.
story, like to the fullest extent. But
I love this.
so
All right. So what is your top piece of advice for all of our writers who are listening in?
So we did discuss this, but it is really trying to write from a place of joy. Like just trying to focus on the things that make you happy and something that you would like to share with the world.
Hmm.
Writing from the point of view of trying to fit in with a trend can seem fun at first, especially during the outlining phase, especially if you're reading a bunch of books that have to do with that trend.
Yeah.
But even if you do decide to do that, try and fit something that you've always loved in with that story because, the world might get sick of like a certain story at a certain point, but you never will if you're bringing in some
Right.
aspect of what you love to it. Like that will always be your story and it's something you can always be proud of and relate to. Whereas that might not necessarily always be true with a trend.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. At some point, I think like maybe a year ago, I started keeping just a document with all the things that I love. And like I have it kind of like divided up between like character types and settings and aesthetics and tropes and all those different things. And whenever I encounter something that I love, I just like pop over there and I type it in. And actually it's a spreadsheet, so that should
Hmm.
make you extremely happy. It's a
It
spreadsheet.
does.
And we have I shared it with a couple of my friends, and so we each have a tab on the bottom so we can see what somebody else writes down as well, and we
Oh,
can then
that's
get
nice.
like ideas off of that because we're like, oh yeah, like I also love that because I mean we're friends for a reason, so we have similar tastes in things. Um, but it's kind of been nice to just keep this document of things I know that I love that I one day I want to put in, and even if it's something really small, like I love eating personally. So in any book I write, there's usually a lot of reference to eating. Um, and they're enjoying meals together. And that to me is like really important. So I always put that in because that makes me happy. So yeah, I
It
really
makes me
love
happy too when I read your books. That's part of the aesthetic.
it is. It's fun. It's fun. The good food that we're eating. Um, so all right. I have four lightning round questions for you. So you're not allowed to think about these. You just have to like fire off your answers as fast as you can. Are you ready?
Okay, I'm
Okay,
ready.
so number one, if you could live in any location from a book, where would you live?
I would live in the tea shop and under the whispering door.
Ooh, I don't think
I'm
I've.
very much a cozy person. I love everything that TJ Klune writes, but that tea
Okay, I
shop
have
just
not
has
read
like
that one. Is that the
it's very
sequel?
good. No, it's not a sequel. It's like
Okay,
it came out right after The House in the Cerulean Sea.
okay,
And I won't spoil. It's just like I've always loved a coffee house. Like I've always loved a tea house, and I feel like if I could have like a little apartment above that particular
mhm,
tea house,
yeah. And
like
I
I
feel
would just be
like
living
he
my
writes
best life
such
constantly.
cozy books. Like everything I've read from him, I'm like, it's like if a book was a cardigan. Like I just want to like
Hmm.
wrap myself in it and just be cozy.
And that's the kind of house I want. That is the kind
Yeah,
of house I want. So I'm
yeah.
living in under the whispering door, and I'm going to be drinking a lot of chai tea. So
I
there is my rapid fire answer.
100% support this. I love this. Okay, what is your favorite word?
Ooh.
Appropriate or non-appropriate, whatever you want
Oh
to give.
no, it's very appropriate. I am a middle
Okay.
grade author. Let me think.
I'm like we don't have a like any type of PG
Oh, I have a
rating
very
on
good one.
this.
My favorite word is my husband's name, Ben. That is my favorite word.
Oh wow.
Mhm. I love
Interesting.
him. I love someone saying like, "Here comes Ben." It's
Okay.
Ben.
Fascinating. Fascinating. All right. What book do you desperately need there to be a movie of?
I okay. Can I do an HBO miniseries?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, I would love to see an HBO miniseries of the Hunger Games
Okay.
because I feel like there's so much that is missed out on when you have to get like a book like that that has so many different elements, like just
In
to get
that
it
little,
down into
yeah.
like a couple hours. I would love to see it handled in like a long form series.
Okay. I could get behind that. Do you have anybody
But
that you
yes.
want to cast for this?
I would love to play Caesar Flickerman. I feel like I would thrive.
I support this. I support this.
But yeah, I'll be there. I'll do my hair short. It'll be great.
Yes.
Yeah, I would love to play Caesar. Is my answer. I don't know who I would necessarily cast in it.
So
Um,
have you read the new books?
I have. Yeah, I finished the most recent one in one day. I was
Okay.
like, I listened to the audiobook, I will point out. I just,
Yeah.
it was like a weekend and I was, doing my work and like all
Yeah.
that stuff. But I did listen to an audiobook and it was so sad.
Yeah, I
But it
don't
was
know
really,
why.
really well written.
I've been putting off reading them and I'm not sure why because I enjoyed the original ones. I like them. I think that they're really solid, but I'm just like I'm so hesitant to dive into the new ones and I don't know why.
They are very heavy.
Okay.
It's going into a Hunger Games book, like it is not a light read whatsoever.
Yeah.
As someone who really does enjoy world building, it is interesting going back and seeing uh, how the atrocity that is the Hunger Games evolved. You know, just from like the 25-year perspective, or what was it, the 10th Hunger Games and the 50th
Hmm.
Hunger Games, and then the modern Hunger Games, and just seeing President Snow in particular and all these different facets of his life from all
Yeah.
like his own perspective and then Haymitch's perspective and then Katniss's perspective, I feel is really interesting. It's a masterclass in villain building.
Okay. Well
But
then I mean villains are my jam. I love villains. They're like my actual favorite thing. So I guess I just need to like get over myself and go read them.
it was very, very good. It was an enjoyable read.
All right. Your last question. What was the
Mhm.
last song that you listened to?
Oh, it's kind of funny. So I am kind of dabbling in an adult novel right now, so I'm just kind of working on, building that out.
Hmm.
But it is based on a bridal party. So it is a bunch of bachelorettes in a fantasy setting. So I was listening to oh God, what's her name? Shania Twain.
Oh my gosh.
Dun, 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 let's go, girls. Like I can't remember the name of this song.
That is
Man, I feel like a woman. That's
that
what I
is
was listening
perfect.
to. Yeah, so I've just been trying to get like that Nashville Bachelorette energy like going on this rainy day in
Yes.
Ohio.
Yes,
So
that has
yeah,
that vibe. Excellent choice. Excellent
yeah.
choice.
I was listening to Shania Twain and making quinoa is kind of how this is going. So,
That is a perfect Monday evening. So you're doing good. You're winning.
mhm.
Awesome. Anything else that you want to share or say?
I will give all my information. So you can, I'm kind of on Instagram and TikTok mainly at this point,
Mm.
under Writing Reardon. I also have a Spotify now for my book, which is kind of fun. You could find me as Writing Ruin there as well. So the Grimsbane family witch hunters is currently out. It's about a family of witch hunters trying to break a generational curse. There's lots of cryptids in it. It's a Halloween story. Yeah, thank you, Katie.
I'm
And
really
then
bad.
the second
I have
book,
like no spatial awareness.
second book, Dad Rock Dragon Quest, is about a blended family trying to rescue a dragon from poachers. If you really liked like kids action movies in the 90s, like this is probably a good book for you. Like if you were into like Jumanji, like that sort of Spielberg Jurassic Park type energy. It's a wild ride, but it's a fun ride, and
Awesome.
there's a lot of character growth. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at.
And all of those
Yeah,
links will be down below the video. So please click on them, visit Instagram, follow, do all of those things. Because obviously, we all know that the more we support our authors, the more books they get to write. Um, so,
that's
and
true.
I would like more books. So do this for me, guys. Do this for me. I need more. Um, so yeah, so thank you so much, Joan, for joining us and talking about plotting. And dealing with my crazy questions. And
No, thank you for having me. They weren't crazy. They were
yeah,
a lot of
okay, I
fun.
guess
So
they
I had a
really
good
weren't all that
time.
crazy, but it just I don't know.
Yeah, they were perfect.
Sometimes I'm like, so yeah, no, thank you so much. And like I said, check out Joan's books. And next time, I think I don't know who I'm interviewing next, but I'm interviewing more people, Scribblers. So like and subscribe, and I will definitely have more videos for you. All right, bye guys.